Mass hysteria.
What is it? How do I cause it?
What are the mental and physical ramifications for those affected? Some of these are questions I've asked myself once or twice, so I did some research, found out what mass hysteria is, and now I'm going to talk at you about it. But first, if you like this video, don't let me stop you from liking and subscribing. No, for real, I won't stop you. Go ahead. Okay, first question. What is mass hysteria? And the answer is, we don't really know. I mean, scientists are able to look at an event where a bunch of people crack and say that's mass hysteria, but as with many things when it comes to the brain, we don't really know why. As you're about to learn, there are a lot of times in history when a bunch of people, all at the same time, decided to go crazy, all in the same way. And there are some theories as to why some of these happened, but there's no definitive reason. Now, with all that said, we're still going to take a look at a few of my favorite instances of mass hysteria throughout history and collectively point and laugh at a bunch of people under immense psychological distress. Let's roll the clock back to 1518. Sigismund the Old, King of Poland, has just married Milanese noblewoman Bona Zavoisa in Wawel Cathedral. Totally unrelated to that, come July, in the city of Strasbourg, France, a woman named Frau Trophy. A woman named Protrophy has just made a decision that will become worthy of a Wikipedia entry. She has decided to start dancing. No one knows why Protrophy began to boogie. Maybe the stress intrinsic to living as a peasant in 16th century France finally got to her. Maybe she was bitten by the jitterbug. All we know for sure is that she decided to start dancing intensely. So she does this for a week, and in that time, 36 people join her. By August, 400 people have started dancing, and I guess downtown Strasbourg is just a party. Although sources do say that the participants were really in a trance-like, almost unconscious state, so their dancing was really more manic and unhinged. So I guess it was less of a party and more of a music festival. At some point, as you can probably imagine, this started to become an issue, but since no one knew what actually started the dancing plague, no one knew how to stop it. The city council did have multiple priests and doctors come in and take a look, but they had no clue what they were actually looking at, and so they just tried random stuff. After a while, the city just decided to let things play out, thinking that eventually people would just dance themselves back to normal. They actually specifically thought hot blood was to blame, which they thought was the cause of everything back then, and they thought that, I guess, if they kept dancing, eventually the people would cool their blood back down. They went as far as hiring musicians, which backfired horribly, as it just encouraged more people to start dancing. Then they did a 180 and banned dancing outright in the public, but by this time, people had it in their heads that they were being punished by a saint or something, so they just kept dancing anyway. At this point, the city banned music outright, and then all of the remaining dancers were forced to go to some mountain shrine to repent to the saint that they had sinned against. And at that point, they solved the issue because I guess people stopped dancing. Some people probably did die from the whole dancing nonstop for weeks thing. But other than that, everyone just kind of went back to their lives and pretended like they hadn't just been out in the street like an idiot dancing for the last month. Side note, I guess this is the most documented case, but apparently there were multiple different dancing plagues throughout medieval Europe, all the way up until the 17th century. So I don't know, that'd be kind of a cool one to bring back. Let's have another dancing plague. I don't know, that would be nice. Now let's head to some other random place in medieval France, to a convent, where a nun has just felt inspired to begin meowing like a cat. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be a prank or what, but pretty soon the entire convent got the memo, and every nun in this place was meowing in unison for hours a day, every single day. This was a building of nuns creating a chorus of meows for no reason for months. Eventually, the people around the convent got really fed up with this behavior, and so they contracted a company of soldiers to go to the convent with rods and beat the nuns until they shut up. Once the nuns heard about this, I think the meowing just ended. Now, there's not a lot of info out there about this story. There's actually only like 2 references in all of writing that specifically refer to this story from the time period, and both of them are referencing an earlier medieval source that has never been found, so it's really hard to prove any of the details on this one. However, there was also a similar biting plague that swept through convents in Germany, where nuns would just bite each other. So this one kind of feels plausible too. I think it was just like really boring to live in a convent in medieval Europe. Also, this one excerpt describes all the meowing as a cat concert, so that's fun. Okay, let's get a little more modern. In 1962, the African country of Tanganyika had recently gained its independence from England, and within its borders, in an all-girls boarding school, several students have just decided to start their Joker arc all at once. 3 girls specifically just started laughing uncontrollably for no discernible reason, and I guess they started letting other people in on whatever joke they had between them, because pretty soon 95 out of 159 students were affected. The symptoms could last up to 16 days, the main symptom being laughing. The whole thing lasted 48 days until the school was forced to temporarily close. After the school thought things had calmed down a bit, they opened back up, and the girls got right back at it, laughing, crying, fainting, having mysterious rashes, the whole gambit. This, of course, caused the school to close for a second time, sending all of the girls home, where they just spread this outbreak even further. In April of that year, in one nearby village, there were actually 217 cases of the laughing plague that were reported over the course of 34 days. By the end of the whole saga, 14 schools in the area were forced to shut down, and over 1,000 cases were reported. The original school where everything started at actually got sued because they allowed this to spread the way that it did. Finally, the people of Tanganyika got over whatever they thought was so funny, and they remembered that they had to deal with the crushing poverty and precarious political position of their new country. Meanwhile, the plague actually spread to Uganda, where there were 2 more outbreaks in 1963. However, there wasn't anything exceptional about them online, so I don't care about them. So these are just 3 of my personal favorite examples of mass hysteria, but there are a lot more. Also, cases like the Salem witch trials are often grouped in as cases of mass hysteria, but they don't really fit the bill of a bunch of people randomly going crazy for no reason at all, so I didn't really want to talk about them here. Speaking of no reason at all, while there isn't a specific reason you could put your finger on as to the cause for like any of these cases, there are definitely some common themes in the lives of these people that you could probably pick up on and maybe might give you a clue as to what would drive them to these situations. Mainly, in every situation, the people affected weren't really people with a lot of control over their lives. The peasants in 16th century France were just that. Peasants in 16th century France. Also, apparently the actual plague was having a resurgence at that time, so that probably added a little bit more stress onto their lives. The meowing nuns were living a purposefully very strict life inside of a convent with nothing to do. Finally, the school children in Tanganyika were living in a brand new country with a very unstable future. Notice you've never heard of Tanganyika. They were also under a lot of pressure from the adults in their life who expected them to perform better academically now that they were in a new country. All of these situations show people who had no real way to deal with or improve their lives, so their frustration and stress might have just boiled over in really weird ways. Then mob mentality could have just taken over with all the people around them, who were all experiencing the same stressors. So in summary, what is mass hysteria? It's probably when a bunch of people just experience a break with reality at the same time and start acting similarly due to mob mentality. How do I cause it? Find a bunch of people and subject them to an environment where there's no positive emotional outlets. Then, put them under a bunch of stress. What are the effects of mass hysteria on the people who experience it? We really don't know, because most of their lives already sucked to begin with. Wow, that's a really downer way to end the video.